We're talking about Newton's third law of motion, and specifically the absolutely fascinating, deeply interconnected world of action and reaction pairs. By the end of this, you'll see exactly why a lone force is basically a physical impossibility.
To really get a grip on the mechanics of this, I want you to picture a specific scenario with me. Imagine you're standing in a small boat out on a perfectly calm lake. You walk right up to the edge, bend your knees, and you jump forward out of the boat and into the water. Now, if we were to watch this play out in super slow motion, we wouldn't just see your body flying forward through the air. The boat itself is actually actively driven backward in the opposite direction. But let's go a level deeper than just noticing that movement. Why does the boat glide backward? And maybe more importantly, why does it move at a totally different speed than you do? Well, it all comes down to this really cool relationship between force and mass, where the exact same amount of physical push yields two completely different visible accelerations just based on how heavy you are compared to that boat.
So the answer to that whole boat mystery takes us back to the core mechanics first articulated by Sir Isaac Newton. Newton's third law of motion states that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. But let's elevate that past the standard textbook definition for a second. What this actually means in practice is that forces in our universe are always coupled. They exist as these simultaneous force vectors, like invisible partners, constantly pushing back. The universe fundamentally demands physical balance, right? Which means you literally cannot have a push without an identical, mathematically perfect pushback. A force isn't just something one object simply does to another. It's a mutual interaction between two objects. They're permanently locked together in perfect symmetry.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it breaks down this coupled interaction using something you can test right this second. Seriously, imagine walking up to a solid brick wall and just pushing on it with both of your hands. The action force is you applying your kinetic energy into the wall. But according to this law of coupled forces, there's a simultaneous reaction. The wall is pushing you back with the exact same amount of force, just in the exact opposite direction. In physics, we actually call this the normal force. It's the perpendicular force the rigid structure of the wall exerts to prevent the atoms in your hands from just passing right through it. You might just feel it as a slight resistance against your palms, but mechanically, that's the wall actively exerting a force vector back onto your body with equal strength.
And this coupled interaction, it's actually the only mechanical reason we can even get around. I want you to mentally feel the kinesthetic empathy of walking. But let's slow it way, way down in your mind. When you take a step, what's actually happening at a microscopic level? Your shoe grips the asphalt, and you apply a backward shear force against the earth. That's your action. In response, thanks to static friction, that invisible partner force from the earth applies a forward shear force against you. Because the Earth's mass is incomprehensibly larger than yours, its acceleration is effectively zero. But your mass is small enough that this forward vector easily propels your body down the street. Your foot shears backward, and the Earth literally pushes you forward. Let's move to and see how this builds, because when we synthesize all these everyday micro-movements, a really clear universal pattern starts to emerge. Whether it's your feet pushing a boat backward so the boat pushes you forward, or your shoes gripping the sidewalk to propel you down to the coffee shop, we're looking at the exact same physical mechanism. We're identifying the specific vector of the action force and the corresponding identical vector of the reaction force. But this framework of mutual interaction isn't just for human-sized movements here on Earth. Once we recognize this pattern, we can escalate our perspective to a macro, cosmic application where the exact same rules dictate the most extreme environments imaginable.
Just look at the sheer scale of a rocket launch. This is where Newton's third law operates at absolute peak cinematic intensity. Think about the incredible, violent power of a realistic rocket launching from Earth. We aren't just talking about a little puff of generic hot gases. We're talking about thousands of pounds of highly pressurized propellant being ignited and expelled downward every single second. The action here is the rocket accelerating that incredible mass of exhaust gas downward at extremely high velocities. And because forces are always coupled, expelling that heavy mass downward creates an absolutely massive, equal and opposite upward vector that we call thrust. The gas accelerates down, and that thrust fights Earth's gravity, driving thousands of tons of heavy machinery straight up into the vacuum of space. It is wild.
And it's absolutely vital to understand the exact timing of these forces too.
Let's zoom back in from orbit for a second and look at two billiard balls moving toward each other on a table. When they collide in slow motion, Object A applies a force to Object B. But this isn't some turn-based game, there is zero delay. At the exact same microsecond, Object B applies an equal and opposite force back onto Object A. Because these forces are perfectly instantaneous and mathematically equal, the total momentum of those two billiard balls remains perfectly conserved. Action and reaction aren't sequential events reacting to one another. They're an instant, simultaneous pairing that perfectly maintains the total momentum of the entire system.
Because this is a fundamental, inescapable law, we see it governing environments everywhere we look. Whether it's a swimmer carving through a pool by pulling the water backward so the fluid dynamics push their body forward, or the sheer static friction of rubber tires launching a 2-ton car down a highway, or precisely engineered rockets piercing the atmosphere by throwing mass downward to achieve upward thrust, it is all the exact same mechanic. This one simple, elegant law of simultaneous vectors helps us understand the movement of literally every physical object across our entire universe, from the micro to the macro.
So the crucial point is this. Every single force in existence comes with a partner force. Every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. You simply cannot exert a physical force on an object without that exact same magnitude of force being exerted right back onto you in the opposite direction. It's a brilliant, mathematically perfect system of coupled vectors that keeps our physical reality completely consistent. Whether you're pushing a wall, walking on the ground, or flying to the moon, the universe absolutely demands total mechanical balance.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer today. But I want to leave you by making this grand cosmic architecture deeply personal. Just take a second right now to physically feel the pressure of the floor against your shoes, or maybe the back of the chair pressing against your spine. What unseen reaction forces are you creating at this very moment? As gravity pulls your mass down, think about the coupled normal force of that chair or floor pushing equally back up against you, actively resisting you and keeping you perfectly anchored in place. Physics isn't just a theory on a whiteboard, guys. It is a mechanical reality you are actively experiencing right at this very second. Keep observing those vectors, and I'll catch you next time.